Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, for everyone catching this live. For those of you who are catching this after the fact, howdy. So I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I haven't done a Saturday show in a while. Last few weeks have been busy, and I've been taking my weekends off, kind of, sort of. Anyway, this is kind of a new person, well, newer for me. I'm pretty sure I've heard her name around before. I think the Raging Atheist has covered videos from Misha Petrov before. I hadn't really paid attention to any of her content. And yesterday, just before work ended, Germania or Ger Streams, he did one of his live streams, and he was covering a couple of her videos. So I was watching some of it, and I was I wasn't really surprised at her takes, but I was surprised at how similar a lot of her takes were to my takes probably would be if I were still a conservative. I used to be one. And they seemed very similar to takes I probably would have had um, when I was her age. My guess is that she's in her mid 20s, mid to late 20s, maybe. And around about that time, I was still kind of conservative, trending, starting to slowly snap out of it, slowly, but um, and everybody's progression politically, is very different. So anyway, yeah, so this one I'm just gonna be focusing on the one. I think in Gur's stream yesterday he kind of bounced around with a few. So but when I went onto her page and saw it, I saw the Roe v. Wade one, so I was kind of interested. So I have not watched this in its entirety. So I've seen clips and snippets of it, some stuff that Gur covered from yesterday. I will say Gurr had mentioned something about he's like, oh great, now Jefferson knows who this is. He's going to cover a video and it's going to get more views than mine. I'm here to let Gurr know if he catches this live or sees this later. Fear not. Peter let me know that Aaron Ra is live right now too. So maybe I won't get so many views off this. And this is somebody new. I mean, I'm kind of known for like going after the precept guys, Darth Dawkins and Jay Robin and people like that. But with some of the political stuff that's hyping up, and it's been more on my mind, it's getting there's stuff happening there, especially cultural conservatives and the Christian nationalist kind of stuff that I do want to talk about. So if that loses me subscribers or loses me viewers, so be it. But just be aware this one's going to be a little bit more political, but it is going to get into some of that Christian stuff. So just want to say hi to the live chat. I think I've already said hi to most of you already in the chat, with the exception of Red Fang. Thanks for showing up. Good to see you. And Carlton Winston is over here. If you guys didn't get a chance to watch, he did one of his D. Roy Cruz breakdown videos a couple hours ago. Well, I mean, it started at 10. I don't know how long it went on for. I think about an hour and a half, maybe. I caught about the first 45 minutes of it. And always pretty good. He was covering DeRoy Cruz, or whatever his real name is. His reactions to abortion and the Roe v. Wade decision and this kind of stuff. And it seemed like, maybe I'm generalizing, but what I caught, it seemed like his video, from what I saw, from what Carlton featured, was him reacting to other people reacting to the Supreme Court decision. And it's funny because I see a lot of conservative takes start that way, and you will notice here that Misha Petrov, her take starts in that direction as well. So I'm going to shrink myself down here, and we're going to play this. Let's see, I think volume levels and everything okay. Same rules apply. Yell at me if you can't hear anything. Otherwise, we should be good to go. All right.
Hi guys, it's Misha and welcome back to my channel. I'm outside today because why not? And it's not like it doesn't make any sense, we're in Mother Nature and we're going to talk about motherhood and abortions. So the Supreme Court just overturned Roe v. Wade, and it has given the power back to the states to decide if abortion should be legal or not. And so what the liberals are saying is that, oh my God, abortion is banned everywhere, which is just a lie. The liberals are super upset because when aren't they?
Ha ha ha. Okay, so she's already starting out mischaracterizing most of this already, right? Like, it's true the Dobbs decision has reversed Roe v. Wade, the original Roe v. Wade decision, which essentially made it very difficult for states. States could pass restrictions on abortion procedures, right? That was actually part of the decision, and that got sussed out with other cases as time went on. So states were able to, they couldn't outright ban it, but they could pass restrictions on certain circumstances a woman could elect to have an abortion, and under what, what trimester, uh, trimester they were hitting, and all that kind of stuff. So there's a little bit of that there. I like the little eye roll. Oh, the liberals they're lying about it because they're all saying that it just ended, it bans abortion. No. Um, if there are liberals out there equating this decision with the banning of abortion outright, then they're wrong. That has not been the reaction that I've heard from liberals. The reaction that I've heard from liberals, especially liberals that are writing about this, is that this has reversed it, right? This is a win for the anti abortion crew, the Christian nationalists that push for this. And this is probably leading towards an abortion ban, right? Roe v. Wade has never been the war, right, for the anti-abortion cause. Roe v. Wade was the turning point. It's the linchpin battle that they had to win. Once they got a Supreme Court to reverse that decision and push things back down to the states, this creates a new set of issues, right? Now, and this has been something that's been talked about before. Okay, well, now that it's not recognized as a right based on the arguments given in Roe v. Wade, this does not mean that an abortion case is not going to go before the Supreme Court in the future. The real trick will be whether or not you think that an abortion case is going to go before the Supreme Court in a way that it's going to get argued where the right gets in, that right gets reestablished based on a new argument being made, right? Because now they've established a new precedent where they've shot down the arguments made in the Roe v. Wade case, right? She's going to get a little bit of this goofed up here too. So she's already starting off with this kind of generalization. Oh, the liberals are lying about this because they're saying it bans it. No, the majority of liberals that I know exactly what this does. It does revert it to the states, like she said. That's accurate. But let's not beat around the bush. The goal of anti-abortion groups is to ban abortion, is to get it banned. They believe it should be equated to murder. The state does not legally have it categorized as murder or even manslaughter. That's what they're working to change, and that's what they're slowly getting. This is a step in that direction, right? Because what is it, 25 to 30 states are probably going to either ban it or restrict it to the point that it might as well be banned, or outright declare it as a murder, right? And then that's going to get into something different too, because that could lead to potential criminal charges against women whose pregnancies are terminated or are aborted in the incidental way, right? Like miscarriages stuff. But that's a rabbit hole. So that's a whole other thing. But anyway, all right, let's let her go on with her criticism here. But already not looking good.
And they're saying that it's a woman's fundamental right to have an abortion. And even though it's nowhere in the Constitution, and how is it a fundamental right to kill a baby? I don't get it, but let's look into this.
Okay, so it's not looking good. It's looking worse now, right? The fact of the matter is, not every right that we have is enumerated in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. That's the reason why we have a distinction legally between enumerated rights and unenumerated rights. In the unenumerated rights, that's something that's secured by the Ninth Amendment, and that's something that actually can be brought up. Well, the Supreme Court ultimately ends up kind of deciding those, right? There's actually a couple of good, well, there are a couple of interesting videos to watch if you want background on this. Nate, the lawyer, did a quick video kind of going through the Supreme Court's logic in deciding the Dobbs case, and he prefaces it with a kind of a brief explanation between enumerated and unenumerated rights and the Ninth Amendment, uh, um, and sort of, how the Supreme Court goes about approaching that in a very general way. Legal Eagle did a longer video. It's about 27, 28 minutes long. I recommend that people go watch that if they're interested in it. Watch them both. Watch Nate's first, definitely, because I think it gives an easier, more succinct explanation of that enumerated, unenumerated distinction. But then when you watch Legal Eagle, I think he gets into more detail. It's a little bit more technical, but it'll kind of round out, sort of an understanding of that. I think each of them probably go inadvertently in a couple of ideological directions, just based on the implications in the way they present it. But anyway, this idea that she's saying, well, it's not in the Constitution, that doesn't matter, right? The right to privacy is considered a constitutional right. That's not enumerated. That's not an enumerated right. It's an unenumerated right supported by decisions the Supreme Court have made. It's based in precedent. This is one of the reasons, people, that precedent has always been considered so important. It's one of the reasons why it's always going to be a question asked during a Senate confirmation hearing of an incoming Senate, a Supreme Court justice, because precedent does support that kind of stuff, because you can end up having a decision in which Supreme Court has found time and time again that an unenumerated right like privacy, that stands, right? And if you've got somebody that comes in and is like, yeah, if I'm a justice, I'm going to say that there is no such thing as a right to privacy, the government, that all that stuff should be reversed. That might be a little problematic, right? That's gonna maybe the senators are going to be like, maybe not this one, right? Because that's right, that can cause some significant issues with the institution, the judicial branch, and the legislative and executive branch, if the judicial branch just decides to start unilaterally, pulling on the strings of things that they've stitched together over, 50 to 100 years.
So a trend that we've been seeing with abortion is it went from safe, legal, and rare to, oh yeah, this is just inconvenient for me right now to have this kid, so I think I'll just abort it. And to that I wonder, well, what's stopping you from doing that when the child is already born? What if
Well, because when the child is born, it's a baby, and that's murder. When it's still inside the mother, it's dependent on her life in order to carry it, and it's either an embryo or a fetus. So there are medical, scientific, and legal distinctions being made there that Misha is glossing over. The idea that it should be safe, legal, and rare is a position that I think most Americans agree with. The idea that um, abortion isn't something that everybody should, anyone should want to have, right? That's not the goal. But the other thing that I think Misha is blowing out of proportion here is that the like, oh, okay, so it's gone from this is how it should be to well, it's just women having it just because a kid is an inconvenience. I don't know of any women that I've known in my life that have ever had to make this decision, regardless of the decision they made, that it looked at it as if, well, it's inconvenient to have a kid, or they were looking at it as a major life change. If I do this, I'm looking at this is the rest of my life. I have this other person that I'm responsible for. They're going to be in my life for, and am I ready to take care of them, right? Um, I don't know that any women were so flippant about this. I think Misha here has probably uh, internalized some really shitty talking points. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later, because I suspect she's going to come back to this, where she's going to hit this point, and what you're going to start hearing is implicit messaging on the quote unquote types of women, right, that pursue an abortion versus the women that don't need them or whatever. So.
if the child is, let's say, 4 or 5 years old and is being super annoying and you think, this is really inconvenient for me. Let me just get rid of this baby. I mean, that's not how it works. Before we get into all this though, please make sure to hit subscribe and the notification bell so that you don't miss my videos. So something that I'm quite perplexed by is why women feel the need to protect their right to an abortion in a time where we have so many forms of contraceptives, birth control, we have sex education in school, teen pregnancies are in a steady decline for many.
Right. We don't have sex education in a lot of schools. It depends on the state that you're in. I don't know where Misha's from, um, but depending on the kinds of school districts that you're in and the kind of culture in the state that you're in, or even the county that you're in, you you either are, I mean, this was an issue, I mean, 10 years ago. I think it's still an issue now, where certain school districts, they weren't going to do sex ed, and if they were, it was going to be abstinence only education. That's going to happen again. I'm sure that that's going to get revisited again. Probably not super prominently, but this has been something that they've wanted to do for a while. It's one thing and this is what I think. This is a Mott and Bailey fallacy starting to occur here, right? So she's like, well, hey, What's the deal with abortion if you've got access to all these kinds of birth control? Well, the fact of the matter is a lot of people don't have access to that birth control. A lot of people were not exposed to the education necessary to really understand their birth control options or how to use them. And then three, a lot of people are in situations where the consistent application of those birth control methods is either contraindicated by their medical history or is financially unfeasible for them for a lot of different reasons. So there's a lot of different factors that can go into interfering with somebody's consistent their capacity to consistently employ contraceptive measures, medically or otherwise, or physical ones like condoms, or things like even an IUD is relative. It's not you need some health insurance to do that. Otherwise, you're paying out of pocket for that. And it's not something that it's one and done, right? You're going to have to get checkups on this. Not everybody has, right? Like I think it's fascinating to hear conservatives talk about this as if, remember, these are the idiots that didn't want Obamacare, right? And they especially didn't want Obamacare with a public option. They don't want national health care. But you hear them talking about this as if birth control and access to this kind of stuff is just a given. Well, anybody can just go to the doctor and get this taken care of, right? You can buy condoms, right? Condoms aren't cheap. Wrong. You can go and get an IUD, and that's just in and out, and it's like going to the body shop. Wrong. You're probably going to need health insurance for that. They're acting like that there's whole layers of societal failures built into this entire issue that she's just automatically glossing over. And this just kind of sounds like a little bit of class privilege, like, right? Like, I don't know where she's at. My guess is probably middle upper class, given her political views. Probably middle class parents, work pretty hard, not a lot of money, but enough. She was basically kind of comfortable, not comfortable enough to just go to school and pay for it for free, to kind of ease into it. I get this sense here that a lot of her politics is driven by she's young, maybe misunderstood, a little bit beleaguered, stressed out. That usually happens if you're kind of on the poor side, But I'm trying to psychologize and project onto somebody I don't know very well. But I'm also kind of reflecting on the fact that that was kind of my position from it. I grew up relatively comfortably, but when it came time to move on to the real world and to get a higher education and go to college, and I know she's been, and she's got videos where she complains about her college. Those are kind of similar to mine, and that a lot of that comes from, um, you know, just being an angry kid that doesn't reflect and spends too much time reacting. So, yeah, Maya writes, evangelicals think women want to have abortions. I'm sure it's happened somewhere, but I've never known that to be true. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And here's the thing: if a woman's making the choice and she ultimately does choose to have the abortion, she does want to do it to some, but she might also want the kid too, right? Like, it's possible for a woman who's in that position to want both, like, and she has to weigh this issue. And the thing that Misha's already getting into, like, oh well, it's supposed to be safe, legal, and rare. To now, I can just have it because it's inconvenient. That is a way for them to push in on this idea that anybody that supports a woman's right to choose and a woman's right to abortion, right? It's based on this flippant idea that they just don't understand the value of life. I've said this before, and it needs to be repeated more often. The majority of women that I have met, and the majority of women that I've heard, I've read making these decisions, and have heard their individual stories about this, weighed the cost and agonized over it because they understood the cost. And that's what conservatives keep just ignoring. She's doing it right here with just the, oh well, you can just go and get condoms. Not everybody can afford birth control, right? Oh, you can just go to the doctor and get the, no, not everybody has health insurance, and even when they do, they can't afford those kinds of doctor's appointments for that, right? Or they don't know that that's an option that they can go and do, or they didn't go to a school district that was funded enough that actually provided real sex ed, as opposed to just the Christian, like, keep your legs closed until and until you get a ring on your finger kind of thing, right? They're just acting as if cost doesn't factor into this, right? And yet these are usually the pro business types that believe human beings are rational economic actors. Rational economic actors are going to weigh the pros and cons and the financial obligations of having a child and decide accordingly. If you believe that people are capable of doing that, then some women are going to be in situations where financially they're going to reach the rational conclusion they can't afford a child, and they're going to terminate the pregnancy, even if they want to have the kid, right? But conservatives don't want to think about the implications of one side of their ideology, the pro-business, money first, productivity first, people are rational financial economic actors, and this culture war bullshit where it's like, no, 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 you guys are a bunch of crazy weirdos that have asked for too many rights, and this liberal Supreme Court allowed that to happen, and it's mollycoddling you, and now it's time for the stern daddy Supreme Court to come out and slap your hands and tell you no more. Um, that's the opinion I'm getting here, or that's the feeling that I'm getting. But that's been kind of their their thing for a while. But this is what there are really key contradictions between two sides of conservatism: the money side of conservatism and the church side of conservatism, especially when it comes to evangelical fundamentalist Christians. They don't always coincide. It's weird that they've been able to reconcile them for so long, right? And one of the common things is that I'm going on way too long a rant here. One of the common things is to think that the money side pits the conservative side, the culture war side, into that to distract them so that they can just kind of enrich themselves. That may not actually be that may be applying less and less now. I believe that to a certain extent with certain actors in those conservative circles. Probably not now though, right? You're hearing more and more conservatives talk about this. And I'll probably get into that later. But keep in mind, back when Reagan was in, like one of the worst things that conservatives' primary boogeyman was the government and taxation. The government telling you what you could and couldn't do, which made Roe v. Wade a little bit easier because most of them were more libertarian, right? Well, I don't agree with abortion, but I also don't want the government getting in my way and telling me what I can and can't do. And I'll be damned if I'm going to pay taxes because taxation is theft, right? That was kind of the original conservative thing. That was the conservatism I came up in. This kind of conservatism is the Christian nationalist culture war conservatism, where go ahead and dictate from on high what people can and can't do with their bodies at whatever cost. Uh, it's gotten really kind of fucking weird, and I don't know how conservatives are going to reconcile this. This is going to blow up. This is going to cause. I mean, you're already seeing it now with the kind of the pro-Trump reactionaries that don't really think about this kind of stuff, and the sort of more center right. Pro-business right-wingers who want to maintain the institutions of democracy and don't really go in for this culture war stuff, but are like, okay, well, I'm a Republican. I guess we're along for the ride, right? So, you know, buckle up, folks. It's going to get crazier.
Years now. So why are women using abortions as some sort of birth control method? Like, that's not what it is. It's an abortion, okay? You're killing a baby. It's not preventing a pregnancy. So with all
Okay, yeah, you're not you are terminating a pregnancy, but she's skipping over things here. Like, you, and you're not killing a baby either. Like, it's very important. This is the reason why I think the abortion debate in this country is so fucked up is because it's been intentionally fucked up, right? And most of that has come from the anti-abortion crowd. It's Mott and Bailey fallacies over and over and over again. Like, it's like, well, hey, we need to ban this procedure, abortion procedures, right? Okay. Well, what about the safety of the mother? Well, what are you talking about, right? I'm just talking about like women who flippantly. She's already kind of setting this up. We're talking about the women that they get pregnant and they're not gonna bother with the birth control. They're not going to be proactively responsible. They're going to go out and get an abortion after the fact. Like, well, first of all, that's none of your business. The fact that they have those options, who cares? Also, here's the thing: prophylactic methods fail. So the fact that a woman can go and get, take responsibility when they realize, wait, that maybe didn't work, and go get Plan B. Plan B is going to be, I think, probably the next thing they're going to go after, right? So it's not as simple as like, oh, I just didn't do this and I did that, right? We didn't wear a condom. I wasn't taking birth control. I missed a pill or whatever. No big deal. When I realize I'm pregnant, I'll just go and have an abortion done. I don't think anybody's approaching their decisions like this, right? Not only that, but people do make mistakes. People do, make questionable decisions. And the idea here is, should a person just should a person not be able to avail themselves of measures after they've had a sexual encounter to take care of a pregnancy or to prevent a pregnancy, right? So, preventing the pregnancy, that'd be prophylactics. Those don't always work. Terminating a pregnancy would be doing something like an abortifacient medication or an abortion procedure. That is not equated to, quote unquote, killing a baby. Medically, killing a baby would be the baby is born, you take the baby out, it's now an infant, for medical science purposes, and then you terminate it. That's not the point of an abortion. The point of an abortion is not to kill the baby. The point of an abortion just as a technical word, just means a terminated pregnancy. Uh, I mean, technically, a miscarriage is an abortion, right? It's just an incidental or accidental one. It happens because of biological factors. What these people are usually offended by, and what she already started going with, is elective abortion, the option for a woman to go and terminate the pregnancy uh, based completely on her decision, right? It's and the right to privacy means she can go and consult with a doctor and have that done. That's it. Not killing a baby. Killing a baby would be she has the baby, she carries the child to term, gives birth to it, and then murders it. That's insane, right? What would be the point? The reason that she doesn't want, usually the reasons that are factored into terminating a pregnancy are health reasons, psychological reasons, economic reasons, financial reasons, social reasons, career reasons. Yep, that's pretty part of the economic thing. There's a huge burden for the woman being pregnant, going through that physically, emotionally, socially, financially, makes a huge difference. Why would she go through all those, take those physical risks, those financial risks, to then, quote, kill the baby, right? That's what she would have to do. What we're talking about, if Misha wants to be serious about these terms and this discussion, is terminating a pregnancy, which is not killing a baby.
All of these other options, why do you even get to the point where you need an abortion? And at some point, even 9 months into your pregnancy, you're telling me that's not killing a baby? There are women who can go into an abortion clinic and get an abortion at 9 months, guys. That's a baby.
No, they can't. And there's a problem with that. Thank you, Jenna. Your rant is on point. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let me know if I'm fucking up, if I'm getting anything wrong. This this idea that okay, so this is where this conflation becomes really key, and this is when it's really important to ask these anti-abortion people, right? Because I'd say everybody's pro-life, I think, unless you're just some sort of murdering psychopath, right? They're anti-choice, they're anti-abortion. What type of abortion are you talking about? Are you talking about a woman's ability to elect to have an abortion? Are you talking about abortion as a medical procedure? Because the type of abortion procedure that a doctor is going to provide at 9 months, right, 8 to 9 months in that third trimester, is probably not going to be something that the mom wanted to have, right? She was carrying the child. Something has happened. The pregnancy has gone terribly wrong, right? The fact that they'll just say like, well, these abortions happen in the third trimester. They do them at 9 months. Yeah, they do them at 9 months because it's a medical procedure because the fetus has died. So yes, technically you're right. There are abortion procedures that happen at 9 months. The issue here is that is not a woman going to Planned Parenthood and electing to terminate the pregnancy at month 9. Those are totally different things. This is one of the reasons why, when you have a discussion or a debate with any of these anti-abortion types, you can never get them nailed down to like, what are you against here? Are you against the procedure in all cases? Or are you against the idea that a woman can elect to do it at a certain point in her pregnancy? Which one is it? And most of them, I guarantee you, cannot figure out that there's a difference. Like the way that she's talking about this, she's guzzled a bunch of the Kool-Aid on this kind of thing, and she's bouncing around with a lot of these ideas. The fact that so many of them are bouncing around this and conflating this stuff and shifting and tap dancing the exact same way. If you see the same routine, it's because they're imitating what they saw from someone else.
And like many people, I used to go, but the left does have a great point about rape and incest. What about those cases? It doesn't seem fair that women have to carry a rapist baby, for example. But then I actually looked at the statistics, and it turns out that I think it's even less than 1% of abortions are actually due to rape or incest. So what about the 99% of abortions that are happening right now? What about the millions of babies that are being murdered?
Not murder, not babies, right? I mean, it really is necessary to bring this up because this is the terminology that they want to use. But okay, so first of all, if they want to say that, well, I don't care, right? My religion or my cultural upbringing, it states that a fetus or an embryo or the first zygote, it's a baby, right? I don't care about your medical terminology. I don't want your science getting in the way, right? Even though they'll use something like, well, you had access to birth control, right? All that stuff was developed by science. But, when it comes to them actually having to commit to something scientifically consistent, they're not going to do it. Like, oh, I just, I don't understand why you're doing this. Let me wind this back.
It's not due to rape or incest. So what about the 99% of abortions that are happening right now? What about the millions of babies?
Well, right now, not a lot of abortions are happening in I think 13 states had automatic trigger laws. So a lot of these clinics are shutting down. Everybody's terrified to do anything. Nobody knows I mean, everybody's trying to work through the new liability, right? Because that's what's going to happen. There's going to be lawsuits going in different directions. The playing field has changed. But this notion here, like, okay, now she's talking about elective abortions. Okay. She just wrapped up a comment about, well, these women just go and have an abortion at 9 months. These abortions happen at 9 months. Yeah, because something really bad happened to the pregnancy, right? But the fetus isn't viable. The passing that pregnancy. In some of these cases, this is really kind of a traumatic thing. In some cases, rare, extremely rare, there's a point where the fetus is not viable. The child's going to be the most beneficial thing for the woman to do, in a very rare situation, is for her to give birth to that child. Right? She's going to end up going through that. Right? For it to pass through the birth canal, and then they just she's basically giving birth to a stillborn. Right? That is incredibly traumatic for a woman to do. Right? That's very tough to do. Now, in most situations, though, the real risk is that the pregnancy is not going to go correctly, and you have to worry about you've got a baby that is dying or has died inside the mother, and there's a real risk for sepsis. Right? That's why these procedures are done, and they need to be done before the sepsis takes on. They need to be able to unfortunately extract that child before it begins to decay. Right? That's the whole point of that. Then she shifts over to, oh, well, what about the 99% of the abortions that are happening because girls just want to do it, right? Like, ooh, an abortion. That sounds like fun. It's a Sunday afternoon. Let's go to the Planned Parenthood and have an abortion just for giggles, right? Like, this is so fucking dismissive of anything that's actually happening here. That it's bizarre to me, right? But I think she's probably going to get into a pretty classic switcheroo. And if she does, I'm gonna hold her to account on it.
That are being murdered. It's not from rape or incest, and so what does the left have to say about that?
Well, if you believe that it's murder to kill the kid, if the child is the result of rape and incest, then you still would hold that the termination of that pregnancy is equivalent to murder because you can't keep your scientific terms straight. If preventing a pregnancy, if terminating a pregnancy at an embryo, whether it's an embryo or a fetus, is equivalent to murdering a baby, then it would hold that you should not make any exceptions to the fact that the woman is carrying the child of a relative or her attacker, and those can be the same person, which is monstrous. So you have to be really careful about the distinctions being made there, especially when you just want to flippantly throw out, well, it's murder. No, it's murder from your particular culture. You believe it should be murder. At this point, it isn't. And even the Roe v. Wade case, Roe v. Wade being reversed with the Dobbs case, it's still not classified. Abortion has not been classified as murder, right? It's probably going to be in some states. But now that Roe v. Wade has been reversed, it's going to be up to the 50 states to decide for themselves how they want to deal with abortion. And many of them, because they are jam-packed with Republican wackadoos, are going to decide that the termination of terminating a pregnancy is equivalent to murdering a baby. And then it's only going to be a matter of time before you see them start to say, well, you know what, preventing pregnancy, that's equivalent to manslaughter, let's say, right? I mean, it all makes sense somehow.
And it turns out that it's really just a problem with them denying the fact that it's a human life, that a fetus is a human life right there. And it's a fault.
No, in some explanations and in some arguments, yeah, people I think go into that, and I don't think that's helpful. But actually, what motivates most women's decisions to terminate a pregnancy, to have that abortion, is because they know damn well that that is a human life, and they understand the cost, and they understand that society expects that cost to be borne by them. Right? I bet you anything. Oh, Misha here is going to get into, hey, there's going to be social welfare for you.
Faulty argument also, because they'll start off by saying, well, yeah, what about rape and incest? And then if someone explains to them, well, it's actually like less than 1%, then they'll be, yeah, but like they should still be able to do it. So they're just bringing up a very rare and a very unfortunate problem. When asked, well, what about the other women that weren't raped? And they will say, well, yeah, but it's still their right. Well, how is it their right to kill a baby if it's inconvenient for them?
They're not killing it because they're not killing a baby. That's the basic problem there. You starry-eyed weirdo. It's not killing a baby. You're talking about a woman being able to terminate a pregnancy so that she doesn't have to physically carry it to term, which is a massive commitment. My guess is that Misha has not had a child. I'm guessing she's not had one. Um, because most of her points, these are the kind of like blinkered opinions of a lot of debate bros, conservative debate bro types that fancy themselves as online chads will come out here and like, well, I mean, why does she have the right to murder a baby? Well, first of all, she doesn't. Nobody's saying that she does. That's the problem. Like, if you want to have this discussion, you need to understand what you're talking about. Talking about murdering babies, that's different than terminating pregnancies. And this is fucking shameless when they do this, right? I understand that they equate a fetus and an embryo with a baby. But for the purposes of what they're talking about, those are different things. A baby is born. A fetus and an embryo aren't. So stop making and this is my huge problem. If I was going to give advice to the anti-abortion crowd, this would be it. If you want to have an honest discussion about this, quit inserting this onto it. Quit projecting that onto it. Be very clear and very concise. Do you want to end the notion that women should be able to expect the right to an elective abortion? If that's what you're shooting for, do that, but make sure that you're couching it in the terms of terminating a pregnancy. If you're saying, well, I don't believe that any woman has the right to murder a baby. Cool, me too. Now can we talk about abortion? Because the thing that you're talking about isn't an actual issue. Murdering babies is not the issue here, right? That, I mean, it can be every once in a while. Someone can murder a baby. But when we're talking about terminating pregnancies, medically or with medicine or with procedures, that's not what we're talking about.
They weren't raped. This isn't a result of an incestual relationship. So what about in those cases, which account for 99% of cases? What about then? And they'll still say, yeah, it's their right. However, I will point out, I do think that it should be allowed in cases where the mom's life is at risk, right? So if the mom could
Okay.
literally die because of the child, then she should be able to have an abortion. And that's a very difficult decision to have to make, but I do think you should save the mother's life. And when I look this up, it happens very, very rarely. And I'm also wondering why we put so much emphasis on funding abortion clinics when we could be financially.
We don't on the funding thing, but let's get back to the original point there. So she's like, okay, so I am for the idea that a woman should have the ability to get an abortion if it's medically necessary. Okay, but that's not an elective abortion, and that's not the right that we're talking about. Saying that I believe that a woman has the right to an abortion if she's going to die if she has the kid is not really much of a right, right? That's just kind of weird. Like, I have the right to not be run over by my landlord, right? That's kind of fucked up. The point here again is, okay, that's fine, but consider what some of these rules put into place, right? If you have a state that passes a law like, say, Texas, right, where it wants to do an end run around the idea that it's a constitutional, it's an unenumerated right for a woman to get an abortion. What do? You pass a law that allows people to go after, the medical provider, right? So the medical provider is the one that individuals can sue to punish them for providing abortion services to this woman. You can't go after her because she's got the right to do it, but I can go after this medical provider because it's not enumerated that medical provider has the right to provide that medical service, right? The termination of a pregnancy. So we'll sue them. And because we're doing it this way, this chicken shit way, we don't actually have a state or municipal apparatus doing it, so they're not actually members of the government. We're just going to allow the judicial branch to bribe these people retroactively after they've sued these people because they were clutching their pearls at the fact that this doctor would provide the service, right? Kind of fucked up, right? That's how this whole thing started. I don't know if Misha remembers all this, but that's where it started. That has a chilling effect on not only the medical community, but it also blurs the line about what you're talking about. If you want to talk about the termination of the elective termination of pregnancies, that's the kind of abortion most people think that you're talking about. If you're talking about a woman entering her third trimester and needing an abortion, so one of these procedures to remove a damaged fetus or a dying fetus or a dead fetus, whatever, right? That's not the kind of abortion procedure that we're talking about when it comes to this. And when it comes to things like that, the problem is when you're dealing with the anti-abortion crowd, it's hard to know if they want to go after that, right? When you have laws like Texas going after medical providers, because here's what ends up happening. Well, if Texas makes it legal and kind of encourages, in a roundabout way, individual citizens to sue me for providing services to women who elect to terminate a pregnancy. What if I, as a physician, end up performing a procedure to save a woman's life in the hospital? Could I be sued under this new Texas law? Legitimate question to ask, massive liability concern, right? That's the kind of stuff that ends up getting screwed up in this. But in their fever to just, oh, we gotta have it equated to murder, they usually fuck this part up. And usually the legislators that try to pass these kinds of laws fuck that up and overlook it. And you end up getting something where it's like, okay, well, as a medical provider, I would like to save your life, but I won't. And if you think this is odd, if you think this is weird, there actually is a situation that I'd heard about. It was in Malta. Malta has strict anti-abortion procedures. Husband and wife went on what they called it's like a honeymoon, but it's when you find out you're pregnant. They go over there. She starts going into labor at like, I think she's maybe 14 weeks in, 15 weeks in. They can't do anything for her. That's how strict their anti-abortion restrictions are. They basically are like, well, we just have to kind of like wing it, or you'll have to go to a country that'll allow you to do it. But given the fact that you are technically in early labor, it's probably not the safest thing for you to fly. But flying is the only way to get off the island of Malta and get someplace in time in order to save your life. So she had to roll the dice and took that chance of hemorrhaging, given the altitude change that happens when you fly. They put her on a plane, flew her to Spain, where they could save her life. So if any anti-abortion activists are saying, oh, well, that's just silly, we would never do that. Yeah, that already has been done. That's already happened. Women have been put in that ridiculous situation already, right? And they've been in similar circumstances like that here in the United States because of what states can restrict. That's already occurred here, so it's not going that's not going to improve at all. And so any of these anti-abortion types are just like, oh, we're not monsters. We're not going to allow that to happen. Yup, you are monsters because you're actively pushing a dogma of you want to tell these people that you can rely on medical science to just make sure that you don't get pregnant, and abstinence helps too. But when it actually comes to the point where they're in an emergency, right, the doctors get nervous because they're like, well, we've got a bunch of anti-abortionists that are freaking out, that you know that we're going to have to do a D&E on an 8 month, a third trimester child that needs to be removed, otherwise the woman's going to die. So yeah, it's crazy. So what she's talking about here, this is always stupid. And the other important thing to do is like, well, yeah, those situations are rare. That's just 1%. That's a useless point to make. If you're talking about elective abortions, then the 1% of women that end up having to get an abortion procedure in a medical situation is completely disconnected from the rest of the conversation that you're talking about. The reason that it's connected now is because so often the abortionists are like, all abortion is murder and these medical procedures should be banned. And then critics say, well, wait a minute, what about the cases where a woman needs those kinds of procedures in order to, to save her life? And then there's the other abortion. Oh, well, we wouldn't do it in that case. Well, then why did you start there? If you just wanted to make sure that what you want done is that women can't get elective abortions, go to Planned Parenthood, then what's the issue? Right? So again, this is and now that this Roe v. Wade case has gone through, and I think more things are going to end up coming up, this is going to be a situation where the dog catches the car, right? Because trying to administer around all this goofy bullshit in the anti-abortion realm is going to be their undoing.
Financially supporting mothers who might not have a partner, so single mothers. I think that accounts for a lot of women that are considering getting an abortion is because they might not have the dad at home or a partner at all. Single mom, it's very difficult. Like, of course, it can be done. There are tons and tons of successful single moms, but it's very difficult to do that, especially if you have a career. So we should be financially supporting those women instead of funding abortion clinics. And another very important point I want to make is,
well, she's in luck, because if she's really about the Dobbs decision and about the idea that it should be left up to the states, the funding of Planned Parenthood services for abortions is largely left up to the states. Because of the Hyde Amendment, the federal government's really not allowed to spend money directly on those kinds of services. Now, there have been anti-abortion groups that have said, well, yeah, hang on though, but there's little loopholes. There kind of is, right? Some states have the ability, depending on how they do it, they have the ability to, at their discretion, route some of the money that they get from the federal government for things like Medicare and Medicaid expenditure towards clinics like Planned Parenthood. And from what depending on the way the state is set up in the state's constitution, I think in some cases, some of that money has trickled into abortion care, right? So very, very indirectly, some federal money that went to the state, that the state then, it becomes that state's income, that state's money. That money then ended up getting converted into something that benefited a Planned Parenthood clinic, right? The vast majority of the money that states spend on Planned Parenthood, or that the federal government sends to states to spend on services like that, is meant for the bulk of what Planned Parenthood does, which is obstetrics, gynecological care, child care, these kinds of things, right? That's the stuff that they always forget about. And that's going to be the next funny thing, right? Is watching, and I guarantee this is going to happen. You're going to have these anti-abortion types wonder why in their state, if abortion has become illegal, why there's a Planned Parenthood clinic still open, right? I can only imagine the beleaguered employees of that particular state having to deal with letters to the governor demanding to know, you said that abortion was outlawed here, and yet I still see that Planned Parenthood clinic open, right? And then they're going to have to explain to them, yeah, I understand that your little movement equated Planned Parenthood with drive-through baby chop, because that was part of your propaganda. But Planned Parenthood only did this on the side, and it was always just for pay, private pay. Individuals had to privately pay for that. It was never funded. That's been shuttered. But Planned Parenthood is still doing things like, prenatal care, postnatal care, checkups for women, all that kind of stuff. Birth control, educational drives, all that kind of stuff. They're still doing that, right? Those states get to deal with those wackadoos who, because of this anti-abort, because of their lack of discipline and messaging, right? And that's what it is. They were not disciplined in their messaging. If they were casting huge, divisive language on organizations like Planned. It's connected to Margaret Sanger. It's a eugenics program. Like, whatever your thoughts and feelings about Margaret Sanger, that's not what Planned Parenthood is now, right? It provides an enormous amount of vital health care to women in communities, and it's a huge resource, not just for people who are living in poverty or people dispossessed or people living on the. It's a huge outlet for health care for college students, especially before the reforms went through with the ACA, where a lot of college students would be in college and would no longer be on their parents' insurance. So they just didn't have those options. So
the argument that, oh, well, men can't speak about it. Men can't speak about abortions because men can't get pregnant. And I think that is so dumb. I mean, first of all, men are impacted by this, because how do you think a woman becomes pregnant? She doesn't magically become pregnant, okay? She's not Mary. So men are very much involved in this because, it could be their girlfriend, it could be their wife. Of course, men have a say. Not only that, men have the right to defend a human life, because that's what a baby is. And with that same leftist logic,
that's what a baby is. Sure, that's what a baby is once it's born, right? But when we're talking about defending the life of an embryo or a fetus at the expense of the mother's life, right, and her choices, her rights, that's a different thing, right? Like, I could be as opinionated as I want. Hey, you know what? That child developing in you is every bit as much mine as it is yours. That's wrong, right? That's just wrong, right? I know that people are like, well, men and women are equal in this religion. No, they're not equal in when it comes to the physical act of reproducing life. Men and women are not equal. The man's contribution is pleasurable and and practically guarantees their negligence after the fact. They really don't have to dial in for much of anything, right? They get to enjoy all the benefits. They really don't have any. They don't have to if they don't, unless they want to, be around for the really negative things, right? Right. If they opt into the whole, well, I was willing to be there and work for them and support the child. Well, good for fucking you. So is she. She's still on the hook for that as well, but she actually has to carry the child to term. She has to go through the fear and the anxiety of all the physical and medical changes that the next 9 months offer her, plus all of the upcoming all of the medical issues that can happen after the fact. They're not talking about the fact that, oh, what about postpartum depression? Uh, that's a real deal. And if you just want to talk about it like a conservative who's only interested in money, that's uh, mental health care is expensive and hard to get. Uh, Postpartum diabetes, thyroid issues. There's all sorts of health issues that can kick in. These are going to affect the woman for life, right? So yeah, the guy has a say up to the point of like, I mean, obviously I'm a guy and I have a say about abortion procedures, but I don't think that as a man I have any say in telling a woman like, I'm going to make this decision for you. Like I wouldn't want her making a decision like that for me, right? This is such a no-brainer. No man would allow anyone, other men or especially other women, tell them like, yeah, this physical thing is going to happen to you. You're going to spend the next 8 to 10 months undergoing this metamorphosis, and then you're going to give birth to this child. It's going to be painful. It's potentially medically dangerous. Once you have it, trust me, it's going to be okay. And yeah, by the way, it's going to lead to some real issues later. You might be blue for months. You might end up having some permanent genetic and endocrinology issues happening that you're going to end up having to pay for the rest of your life. But it's God's plan, so trust us. But no guy would accept this, especially if it's situated like, oh wait, I don't have a say in it, right? Because that's what's essentially that's what's happening in these states now that Dobbs has happened. Is they're basically telling women, nope, no elective abortions. You do not get to decide that. Your doctor can make a decision, maybe in certain circumstances, if your life is at risk. But other than that, no, you will carry the child to term. That's a hell of a role for a state to take. The state is telling these women that they will carry kids to term, right? Because the alternative is, well, the option is, right, and this is where Misha's getting this wrong. Well, the option is murdering a baby. Murder is obviously wrong, so that's not really an option. It's not the option that you think it is, right? This is why it's necessary for them to conflate that term. Terminating a pregnancy equals murder of babies, right? It doesn't, but it's necessary for them to say that so that ideologically they can push the message that it's safe for the state to deny a woman this option because it's not really an option legally after all. We declared it murder, so you don't get it. That's it, right? Stupid. And I would like to say it's largely men that think like this. Not all, but it's mostly men that think like this. And if Misha thinks this isn't motivated by a weird, primitive, arrested development kind of adolescent instinct that men have about claiming women and controlling their bodies, she's got a lot of she's got some really horrible surprises coming, because that is what's motivating a lot of these men about this, is controlling women.
Saying that, well, men can't have an opinion because they're not directly impacted, they can't get pregnant, then how are white people talking about racism in the African American community, for example? Why are you putting BLM in your bio if you're not Black? But if the left actually practiced what they preach, then they wouldn't be talking about other communities. They wouldn't be trying to fight for the rights of so-and-so, because they can't relate to them. They don't have the same experiences. So why are you advocating for this and that? It doesn't make sense. And it is so convenient how 3 seconds ago, women didn't even exist, right? So you can't even define the word woman, but now only women can speak about abortions. Only women are allowed to have opinions on it.
That's a weird and torturous way to bring that kind of thing up. Like, well, you liberals you won't commit to what a woman is. So now, who are you to say that only women can speak about it? First of all, I don't know that many that are. There are some that do that, right? There are some, especially feminists, that will come out and say like, look, men should just sit down and shut up. But I don't really think that that's meant as like an actual like technical argument, right? It's more of a reaction to the fact that like, if I have to listen to one more goddamn Chad tell me that the government doesn't have the right to tax his income, but it does have the right to tell me I can't do something, I can't do something about this kid that I'm about to have, you can go fuck yourself, right? Then it kind of makes sense, right? It seems like a little bit of a double standard. Like Chad over there is worried about, his income tax rate, and the government is thieving, stealing from me. But like, well, you know what, Chad? It's your taxes that pay for that government's capacity to monitor these pregnant women and make sure that they don't go and murder the babies that you think that is going to happen. To Jack's point, he says, I popped this up once before. Pro-lifers aren't going to budge on the murder accusation, and they do have an argument for it. They do have an argument for it, but it's bad, right? Because the argument for murder, to me, is just this notion of like, okay, well, if you're going to make the argument for murder, then you can actually start making an argument for abortion from the position of self-defense. And there's good arguments for that. There's weaknesses, I think, in both. But if you're going to try to do this whole thing where murder is an unjustified killing of another human being, okay, well, what about the justified types of killings that we tolerate in society? We tolerate all sorts of we tolerate killing people for self-defense in most states, right? In fact, it actually undergirds the Second Amendment, right? And the fact it was enfranchised for individuals is because, for whatever reason, they read into the Second Amendment that it's actually about a person's right to defend themselves. It wasn't originally thought of as that. And if they got rid of the Second Amendment tomorrow, it wouldn't mean that you don't have the right to defend yourself. That's codified in other parts of American and English law, right? Like, you're not gonna it doesn't make everybody legally obligated to pacifism. So a woman could just as easily say, well, yeah, okay, well, if there's a person in my house that I want to go and they don't leave, right, then they're trespassing, right, and I can't remove them, or I can't, can you kill them? Yeah. If they become hostile enough, yeah, you better believe it. Now, not all states, other states are going to have different things about this, but the argument can be made, legally and philosophically, that okay, if it's equated, if you want to say that any termination of a pregnancy, fetus or embryo, is murder, well, the argument can be made that, well, this killing isn't murder, it's justified self-defense, right?
And this brings us to the topic of the erasure of womanhood in general, right? We have to ask ourselves, why are women so unhappy in our society in this day and age in America, where women have the most equality that they have ever had? Why are they so unhappy? I think that it has to do with the erasure of women, teaching young girls to be taken more seriously.
Okay, this is getting kind of weird. I mean, now she's psychologizing an entire group. Like, why are women so unhappy? Well, I know, I can guess now why a lot of American women are so unhappy. Maybe. House of Comments. I'm not American, but the vast majority of the world is celebrating the huge win for Roe v. Wade. Well, it wasn't a win for Roe v. Wade. It was the Dobbs win, right? Roe v. Wade is a case. Basically, anybody who made the arguments for Roe v. Wade basically has now, retroactively been, kind of shut down for it. And I don't know that everybody in the world really is. I mean, even Boris Johnson, who came out and said that said something to the effect that America is going the wrong way, which I didn't really expect him to say much of anything about it at all. And yeah, it seems the fetus has more rights than the person carrying it. It can get that way, yeah. Like, and I can understand if they're trying to make an argument like, well, okay, the woman's in a difficult legal situation where there's this other human life in her, and if she takes steps to have it killed, and I mean, this stuff has come up before. This stuff has been argued to death. But the problem with this entire thing is that without the mother, there isn't going to be a life, right? And this life happening wouldn't have happened without two people getting together in the first place, right? So human beings have this capacity when they have sex to produce life, right? And what the state is actually getting into at this point is that those individuals don't have the right to reverse course on that. That, I think, is kind of weird, and that the state has the right to enforce the woman carrying that child to term, right? That is an unequal application of the state's power on a woman because of the unequal relationship that men and women have when it comes to the reproductive act, when pregnancy becomes involved. So
Obviously, you have to be more manly. And you could see that with the transgenderism trends going on right now. It's a lot of female to male, a lot of teenage girls transitioning into men without gender dysphoria, which just does not make sense because you need to have gender dysphoria to be like an actual transgender person because it's a mental condition, right? But no, these girls are feeling so unhappy with being a woman that they're taking the next step and just saying, okay, well, if I become a man, all my problems will be solved.
I don't know where she's getting this. This is really fucked up. Like, I don't think the idea, like anybody is saying, you know what, as a woman, if I become a man, she's still going to be seen as trans by the vast majority of the culture, right? Even if they're accepting of her, like she's not going to be 100% a guy, right? That's this is a really weird take for her. Like, I don't know how many people the people, if it's gender dysphoria, right, there's a real need for these women to discover who they are, why they feel this way, and to work through that. And that's the point of the counseling, that's the point of the medical procedures. That's There's a process, right? It's still developing, but it's there. This claim that, oh well, there's some women that are just basically hanging it up, you know what, being a woman is too tough, I'm just going to become a dude. Wow. Wow.
And that is so, so sad. I also want to talk about birth control. I have
It would be sad if it were true, but you just projected something onto a huge portion of the population that I don't think is actually happening in the minds of a lot of people.
discussed it in one of my earlier videos where I reviewed the What is a Woman documentary. Basically, I was talking about how puberty blockers are a huge thing right now, and they're stopping a natural process, right? Puberty. I like to claim that it's completely reversible, no problems whatsoever. And it's just not the case. It's just not the case. You can look at all of the side effects reported, and to stop like such a natural process, puberty, there's no doubt there's going to be problems stemming from that. And how does that relate to birth control? Well, again, a natural process of, you know, your womanhood, your period, it is going to cause major issues. And I don't think this is talked about enough because these companies are getting a lot of money for it, right? Both with birth control and now with these puberty blockers. And they don't want to tell you all of the side effects, but you can open up a birth control packet and look at all of the side effects. There's literally breast cancer written.
What in the This has gone into some, okay, like, and I know, like, House of Comments, I don't know if he's still watching this or not, okay, but at this point, even for you, I know you from the UK, you have to admit that at this point Misha just sounds like a crazy country homeschooler rattling on some conspiracy theories. This is some bullshit. Remember, she had started off talking about, why are women getting abortions when we got access to all this birth control? Now she's talking about what a racket birth control is and how potentially damaging it is to you physically. What the fuck, Misha? So this is just basically, well, you know what? If they get rid of birth control, I guess that's good. Well, okay, Misha, that's going to contradict your argument then. Now you're going to have a situation where, like, well, we got rid of that because we needed to get rid of these dangerous prophylactic manufacturers, because if you look at birth control, like, I agree, birth control pills are some bullshit, right? Like, women end up having to deal with incredibly increased rates of stroke and blood clots because it's affecting their hormones. It also affects it starts to affect them interpersonally. It can start to have long-term effects on how they not only feel about themselves, but start to feel about people in their families and in personal relationships. They've begun demonstrating that prolonged uptake of progesterone in order to, or whichever hormones they're using, can affect how they're even relating to sexual partners. It can change the types of people that they're attracted to. It can change their it can also affect them emotionally, right? They can become depressed more often. People that relatives of mine, women in my life that I care about, have been on forms of birth control that permanently affected, it caused bone loss that is permanent, right? So I agree here. There is birth control out there that has some serious side effects. But here's the thing: all of this kind of birth control has also been left on women. They have come up with birth control pills that work on men. They were rejected because of too many side effects. The majority of the side effects that these pills had were equal to, and in some cases less than, the current hormonal regimens available to women. But, no, this is never going to go. Men are never going to take it. Huh. I wonder why not. I wonder why that is, right? And they've done studies on this as well, where they find that men who are with sexual partners that they've deemed more attractive, they're less motivated to use birth control, right? They've done surveys on this, they've done studies on this. I can't remember the last one that I saw, but it was telling, right? So men are not reliable when it comes to birth control. So most birth control, because women are going to be the ones that. Why do they market it to women? Why are women interested in it? Because women have to bear the cost of the pregnancy, physically, mentally, socially, financially. They bear the cost disproportionately than men do. So men are going to blow off any attempt to, like, I'm not going to take a pill at noon every fucking day for the rest of my life just to do that. I'm not going to do it, right? And it says it might cause headaches. Fuck that shit, right? But well, a woman is looking at a birth control regimen like this can cause blood clots and circulation issues and bone loss. Awesome, and it potential increases in breast cancer. Yes, that all that stuff can happen, right? So why isn't the research pushed into something that allows women, like, say, like a smart IUD that allows women total control of their reproductive cycle? Why hasn't that been something that's been put forward? Why, if people are making so much money off this, Misha, why didn't they come up with something better?
Then on the side effects, okay, I gotten such the craziest stories, guys, from my friends. They've gotten ovarian cysts that have ruptured. Okay. I know this woman that my family is friends with, and she actually got breast cancer, unfortunately. So it's just not talked about at all because these companies want to keep that information from you.
They actually have to disclose it, and the reason that Misha knows about it is because it is disclosed in the side effects. They disclose them all. That's something that they have to do. Anybody that's seen one of those birth control ads has seen, they even on the ad they post the scroll of side effects. Spooky Editor, what? House of Commons has a UK-ish accent, but I believe he lives in Germany. We don't claim him. Okay, that's fair enough. Yeah, it sounded like he was from England, or at least spent enough time there. But I didn't pick up a trace of another kind of accent. I've started to watch some of his videos, but he's basically he's one of these, like, kind of dark enlightenment reactionary guys. So I take everything he says with a grain of salt. In fact, here we go. Here's some of the reactionary crap. Over-sexualization with no moral grounding has caused this. This is the start of the worldwide fight back against unchecked liberalism. Yeah, this isn't really liberalism, though, right? I mean, maybe, but liberalism in the sense of, like, good old classic liberalism would be like, you don't, especially like a capital L libertarian wouldn't really give a shit about this. If somebody wants to eat a diet of nothing but honey for the rest of their days, they can do that, right? I don't care if it hurts them, right? If somebody wants to have abortions or unprotected sex, I don't care, right? Now, where libertarians usually go wrong is that they think, like, my actions affect me and no one else, and that's usually where the debate starts to fall apart. But over sexualization with no moral grounding, the over sexualization part I don't really understand, because sexualization in terms of, like, how we discuss ourselves or how we present ourselves, or are you talking about actual rates of people having sex? I don't know what's like for where you live, House of Commons, but sexual activity amongst Americans has actually declined, right? Hookups in general, I think the average age for people losing their virginity has increased. Um, I think total numbers of sexual partners over time has decreased with each generation, as far from what I've seen from different surveys. So I don't think there's anything wrong there. And as far as moral grounding goes, um, I don't know where you're from, but this country is just chock full of religion. So lots of moral grounding there, but it was based on a tradition where a government was supposed to be kind of at least, nominally pluralist, thus the secular thing, and supposed to pass laws based on the fact that people could be different and their religions could have different opinions. But all right, that's enough of that.
And it's so sad what's happening because these doctors are prescribing birth control to so many girls for every little problem.
This is problematic here. Why not address the root issue of casual sex, which is the source of the problem? Casual sex isn't the root of the problem, though, right? I think it's something like 82% of the women that actually get, at least in the United States, I think, I think this was from the Guttmacher Institute. I think it's around over 80% of the women who actually get an abortion procedure already have kids, and are in a long-term relationship or are married, right? They're getting the abortion because um, there's lots of different reasons, right? Which is one of the reasons why a lot of women. This is where women will be like, well, it's none of your fucking business. I've got a life to lead. I've already got kids. It's my reasons for why I don't want to go through another pregnancy at this point, right? So the idea of casual sex, I mean, let's address that. If the majority of elective abortions are happening from women who are in long-term relationships and already have kids, then many of them, not all of them, right? Because there's going to be some where a woman has a different sexual partner other than the father of her children, or something like whatever. But in many of those situations, it's going to be the result of her getting pregnant from her long-term partner or her husband. So if that's happened, then what? Casual sex isn't the root of the problem, right? Unless you want to say people should only be unless you're one of these like traditional Catholic types where people only have sex when they're prepared to have as many kids as possible. House of Commons, are you a traditional Catholic? One of these like traditional Catholic monarchist types? Anyway. Yeah, Jenna Fowler, what do you define as casual sex? Yeah, because in the confines of a married relationship, I wouldn't call that casual sex. Most people would consider casual sex like, people who are otherwise unmarried, unconnected, hooking up. Or actually, people who are in committed relationships hooking up with other people.
Right? You have acne, birth control. You have cramps, birth control. They're shoving pills. It's also really unfortunate because we've forgotten about so many natural remedies that exist for, for example, acne or mood swings. There are so many amazing and powerful natural remedies that you can get, like herbs, that you can make teas.
Wait, what?
And it works because it's worked for so many years, and no one talks about it because it's
How many women? There are plenty of women know about raspberry leaf tea and what it can do for periods. They know about what it can do for morning sickness. It can be potentially unsafe at a certain point. I don't think women are supposed to drink raspberry leaf tea in the first trimester. These are things that a lot of doctors know about as well. Now, the reason why women have to be careful about even those kinds of things, yes, they do work. There's certain things that women probably shouldn't drink herbally, and should be careful about what they're ingesting. And that goes with medication as well. That's sort of the point of like going to a doctor and discussing this with them, right? Unfortunately, a lot of doctors don't know about some of the herbal remedies, but most herbal remedies are not medicine per se. They don't have the dosage strength for that. I'm a big proponent in eating healthy and using herbal remedies, but most of them, they just help with symptoms and stuff. They're not these cures. It's very hard to get something that is even in the herbal realm that's even the equivalent of Tylenol. And that's even if you're getting like white willow bark extract, right, which is kind of a blood thinner, does not, or not Tylenol, aspirin, right? White willow bark, it doesn't even get you really in the ballpark, right? It's adjacent to the actual form of aspirin, the salicylic acid that is produced as the drug. So the this idea, like, and what herbal tea is available to help a woman to keep women from getting not pregnant? Also, let her finish this point real quick here.
so much easier to go to your doctor and get a prescription, and then they get money, okay, and you're drugged up and it doesn't even work half the time, and it gives you all
It gives you all these. No, it
of
doesn't.
these side effects. And back to periods in general, I feel like women
Okay, she's going to get into a weird one here. I actually heard this one from Gura. Okay, so, um, oh God. All right. So don't go to the doctor, or at least, keep in mind that the doctor's probably going to charge you for this medication and it may not work all that well. Birth control is extremely effective if it's taken at the same time daily, hormonal birth control. Condoms are also extremely effective. The only problem is that fucking guys are pigs and won't wear them, right? Or do weird stuff like, oh, we can do it bareback for a while, but when I'm ready to go, that's when I'll throw it on. And wrong, right? Bad sex hygiene. Um, all of these are effective if they are used correctly, right? And hormonal birth control is an option for some women. It is not for others. That is between her and her doctor. They have to go through that. This notion that you can pursue holistic, herbs and natural stuff. Okay, let's say that that's correct. Is Misha okay with the idea? So she shouldn't go to a doctor. She doesn't have the right to terminate a pregnancy. Um, does she have the right to eat rhubarb while she's pregnant? Does a woman have the right to eat these natural products, right? Because, oh, there's teas and there's herbs and there's supplements and stuff out there. They work, and just doctors don't know about them. They won't tell you about them because you can save money. Actually, you usually don't save money on them, but oh, you can save money on them. Okay, cool. All right. Well, a natural remedy for there are herbs and things out there that are detrimental to a pregnancy. Rhubarb is one of them, right? So if a woman just decides, like, you know what I'm going to do, I'm going to have a slice of rhubarb pie every day. I'm just going to start doing that, and we'll just roll the dice and see what happens. It's nature. It's God's will. It's nature taking its course. Is that okay? Right? Because you're going to have to do something about that. These are going to be the next steps. This is going to be what happens after they get their ban, which they're going to get. They're going to ban it because the states are going to do it. They want a federal one. They want it coast to coast, border to border. When they get that, they're going to start going after women who pursue things like this, right? When women are forced underground for these issues, and this stuff goes back to the midwives, which is something that medical doctors didn't want. That's the American Medical Association was partially formed for the purposes of getting these kinds of midwives treatments and barbers and those kinds of things, and getting all that kind of care put under one umbrella. The American Medical Association, it's the purview of doctors, learned doctors who have a scientific method and understand the latest techniques to provide real healthcare to real people, scientifically demonstrably proven healthcare, right? Now you're just going to send women are now going to start looking for the midwives again, right? And now conservatives are going to have to shift and go after traditional midwives for providing this kind of care, which they've done for thousands of years before this stuff became part of medical science, and then try to say, well, these are just, how did House of Comments put it? If you do not understand us conservatives, you will not be able to oppose what we are coming for. We intend to reverse all these progressive rights one by one. I think everybody is starting to get that now, right? I don't know, House of Commons, what happens in either your country of birth or the country that you're in or whatever kind of fight that you're for. But yeah, no, we get it. People shouldn't have progressive rights. You probably are a fan of monarchy, or it does sound like you're an autocrat, right? Like, people should not have these kinds of things. There should be a strict control, top down. Cool, right? Okay. But these ideas, like, one of the things that a lot of reactionaries will appeal to is going back to a system that had all these benefits to it that we've just given up on and we really shouldn't have, like, say, a monarchy, or maybe like a kind of Hittite form of fascism, right? Autocracy. Cool. All right. Are you okay with returning to a tradition in which women get the majority of their health care from their midwives, right? They keep the stuff secret from men. When the man's away, or he's down for the count, maybe he's in his cups one night, she decides to sneak out. It's time to go see Sarah up in the mountains, and that's where she goes and has her care taken care of there, right? And women keep this amongst themselves, like they've been doing for thousands of fucking years, because men can't deal with this, right? They go and deal with it there, and then they come back and no one is the wiser, right? That's the tradition that we're going to be going back to, thanks to conservatives. So yeah, I think I understand exactly what you're coming for, House of Commons. You want to make society worse. So
are so ashamed of that, and it's so sad. It's like, it doesn't make any sense for such a natural part of your life to be shamed like that by society, and to be told that, oh, you're on your period, it doesn't matter. Like, have you seen these tampon commercials, or for birth control commercials, right? They're like, go run that marathon, you're a girl boss, go back to work, do this or that, there's no problem, you can do it. But
a lot of women can. I don't know what she's talking about here.
it's literally a time when you're supposed to rest. Your body is going through so much, right? You're shedding what you no longer need, and it takes a toll on your body, and you need to have rest. Great time to become more in tune with yourself. But as
I think there's a big obvious cut there, so I wonder what she cut out.
a society, we're teaching women, no, you have to be ashamed of your period.
You do not. How is she getting that? How is a tampon ad telling women, like, hey, use our product because it's going to give you the kind of, it's going to give you the assurance and knowing that you're not gonna have an accident while you're either at work or just out and about in your day. Like, I don't understand how that's telling women, like, hey, you need to be ashamed of yourself, right? It's like, hey, tampon. I mean, maybe I'm weird. I grew up with sisters. I grew up with a mom. They were relatively open about this kind of stuff. I've known about this stuff since I was younger, so I've never understood like people who get weird about it. I think it's fucking weird that she is. This sounds like something I'd hear from like a guy who is a single child, never, no brothers and sisters at all. And it's just like, hey, about that period stuff. What I heard is that when they go through their monthlies, what they really need to do is just they need to be bedridden for about 4 or 5 days to get through the fever and the panic and the nausea. Like, not every woman experiences that every month. Like, some women do, right? There's certain medical conditions that can complicate that. Some women have a terrible time when it's that time of the month, right? And yeah, they're probably going to take it easy, right? They're not going to be going out and running a marathon. Not every woman is like that. And for a lot of women that I have known in my life that were on a steady, consistent regimen of birth control, it minimized a lot of they were often on it, not just because they were sexually active and didn't want to get pregnant at the time, but they were on it because it helped control some of those symptoms. When it was that time of the month, they were running marathons. They were going and exercising. They didn't need to call in sick. They didn't need to lose time at work for that. They didn't feel bad. So this is just bizarre.
Prevents you from being.
Oh, but I forgot. They're not supposed to be taking the birth control because it can cause breast cancer. That's what Misha said. Right. It's just, I guess, if it has side effects, everyone gets those side effects. I guess that's what's supposed to follow from that. Yikes.
Being more masculine and going out into the workplace and doing this and that, or lifting weights. Go lift weights. You're on your period. It shouldn't matter. Oh my gosh, it's ridiculous. We as a society are telling women basically pretend that it does not exist. So it's erasing something that women, that is so natural in being a woman. And you can go on and tell me, oh, but men can have periods, right? No, they cannot. Biological women have periods. You can be transgender, whatever, but biological women have periods. Men do not have periods. Even with the moon, for example, the moon is such like a feminine symbol for a reason. A lot of women are completely synced up with the moon and their periods. And I don't know if a lot of men know this or not, but it's even called like the moon cycle sometimes. But I mean, that's
Yeah.
so beautiful. And your body is mostly made up of water, right? So it's just like this very powerful and this very spiritual thing. It really connects you to nature. And to just completely stop your period with birth control, it has horrible side effects. And you can look into this if you don't believe me.
Okay. Not every. What in the fuck is going on? Like, just a little. Does she have any female friends? I'm not going to say women friends because I can't define what that is, right? So she'd call foul on that. Female friends, like, what the fuck? I'm calling the police. Look, you called it, man. You said, hey, Jefferson's going to cover it. I am covering it, but look, live views are peaking right now. I think at like 52. So I'm not getting that many views right now from this new person's arguments that I'm tackling. It's not my usual Darth Dawkins shtick. So, and Arn Ra's on right now too. So I'm like, I went live at a busy time, and yeah, so apologies, Kara. What? She lost in the sauce? Yeah, I mean, these are the ramble. I mean, this almost sounds like I'm listening to like my grandmother who was 87, right? Like, like, oh, that birth control, it just shuts off your periods, and then when you have that, you become a dude, like. Okay, my friend Stacy got a mustache from it. They was trying to make a man out of her. And I told her, you need to get off them pills. What you need is just some black cohosh and and a warm and a lie down. Like, okay, Grandma. Black cohosh, by the way, can work, but look into that stuff because not all herbal supplements are actually packing what they're purporting to have.
But yeah, a lot of doctors won't tell you about it. And you may not believe in the spiritual aspect of all of this, and that's fine. You can look up the side effects. It still shows you all of the mental and physical side effects that it has. Seen a lot of TikToks with women starting birth control at a certain weight, and then when they go off birth control, they have gained 30, 40 pounds.
Yes, some women do gain weight on birth control. Some women don't. Some women have gained so much weight on birth control that birth control isn't contraindicated for them. And I especially some of the ones that there's an injectable. Is it Depo-Provera or something like that? It's an injectable. I think it's good for 6 months. There's another one that's an implant, and I have known people in my life, and even a couple relatives. Uh, I want to say I think one gained 80 pounds while on one of those. But that wasn't really the issue. I mean, the weight loss was bad enough, but it was a combination of weight loss and calcium loss, right? And it's basically just too powerful for what it is. The advantage to those ones is that you don't have to worry about timing a pill, right? And for some people, that really is an issue. They're not going to remember to take the pill. And with birth control pills, you really do kind of have to hit them at the same time. That's why they have those tracker apps and stuff like that for to keep track of them. You can't even if you're off by an hour or something like that, they start to gradually lose effectiveness. So, yeah, yeah, there are side effects to them, but again, it depends on the person. Not every woman is going to gain a bunch of weight on birth control. Not every woman is going to lose their period on birth control. Not everyone. I mean, it sounds like it's like, well, the one thing it's going to do is it's going to erase her period, and then all these women are going to have all these bad side effects. You're going to gain weight. Like, there's a lot of weird fear mongering going on about this kind of stuff, and most women have been aware of this. There are trade-offs to using hormonal birth control that most adult women at this point are well aware of. I think it's unfair that the medical science behind this still is still where it is, where women have to manipulate their hormones in order to keep themselves from getting pregnant because so many men won't fucking wear a Jimmy hat the right way or at all.
I mean, it's so crazy how birth control messes up your body, and no one is talking about this. And sure, some women have a more male temperament, so like with aggression, the physical aspect of it remains the same. You still get your period, you're still a woman, right? So to completely ignore that because you're told to push through it and to be more like a man, I mean, of course women are going to be unhappy because they're trying to be someone they're not. You can't be a man because you're a woman, and that's fine. You have to embrace your womanhood, okay? It's so, of course women are going to suffer in today's society if they're constantly being told that to be successful you have to be more like a man, because you will never be a man. And
that is not what women are being told. By I don't think anyone. I don't understand how she's drawing this conclusion from society at large. Digital Hammurabi writes, in a suicide attack, a man brought down a place of worship, killing himself and 3,000 men and women. His name was Samson. Yes, he did. Are you trying to say that was one of those justified killings that happens in the Bible from time to time? Then it's okay, but
to relate this back to pregnancy and motherhood, it's seen as some sort of empowering thing to get an abortion nowadays. It's like, yeah, just you're a girl boss, kill that baby, go back to work, you don't need that. And it is so bad. Like, that's just crazy. Instead of empowering motherhood, I mean, maternity.
Okay, I do have to point this out because it's he's at BLM is the worst thing for Black Americans, whereas all the stolen money from BLM with the raspberry face, dude. This is why, like, I love it when guys like this, come on, because if you watch any of his stuff, um, do so with a huge grain of salt, because it's this reactionary horseshit kind of conservatism, like, we just need to, the Enlightenment was a huge mistake. The idea that people can make decisions for themselves, whack, whack, whack. And then turn around and what are they left to do? Like, you create a video, great, cool, you got a channel, you want to get your philosophy out or your ideology, whatever. But then you're on live chats like mine over here, trolling, right? Like, that I don't think there's anything. Can you demonstrate that BLM has quote unquote stolen money? What the hell does that even mean, right? And if your quote, or if your citation is like, oh, some piece from like Newsmax or some American, right-wing propaganda outfit, I mean, well, I think that everybody's just gonna, like, boo you for that. So I don't expect a citation to be produced. So yeah, for what it's worth. Um, how do you feel about House of Cards again? He's dangerously close to me, possibly overstepping my wrench. I mean, right now, no. But again, like, if this gets into, like, I mean, reactionaries in general basically are Nazis, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, because most of the stuff that they're reacting to is some kind of, like, previous regime that will make society better. I mean, he's even said it, like, this is about a war for the future. No, this is about reactionaries are fighting a war from the future or of the future, right? They don't want the future to show up. They want to revert back to some some idealized age where things were better and people, where men were men and women were property. That seems to be like kind of where he wants to go. If you just have a strong church and a goodly king, then society will just tick along great. Like, okay, which church, which king, right? Because I don't remember there being a lot of stability with those systems either, right? I just think it's fantasy. But since most of these guys are looking back at monarchies and stuff like that, I think they've watched a lot of Game of Thrones. They kind of lived through it a little bit too vicariously, and now they're just like, this is the kind of society we need, right? Yeah, no.
Leave is a thing.
So yeah, I mean, for now, I mean, keep an eye on House of Comments, right? Because the kind of evil surveillance state that's coming to all countries hither and yon. I don't want him to be feeling that in the live chat. But if he starts getting like overtly racist or fucking hateful, yeah, boot him.
And we have to empower women. We have to empower mothers, because that is so incredible. Like, to be able to bring another human life into this world. I mean, you have to be one strong woman to be able to do that, right? Like, that is a beautiful and strong thing. And to say no, actually, that somehow makes you weak, and just abort it and then just keep going to work or whatever else is going on. I mean, and now people are even celebrating abortions, right? They're making abortion cakes. I don't know if you've seen those photos. I'll probably insert some here. But I mean, wow.
Did it occur to you that maybe they did that just to like fucking cheese you off? Like, I mean, I really don't get this. Like, liberals troll too. Like, I don't understand this. Like, you can come out and say all these leftists and liberals are trolls, and then they're like, have you seen them do this? Like, yeah, you just said they were trolls. What makes you? I mean, I'm pretty sure like an intentionally offensive cake was probably posted on social media to get a reaction from people like Misha Barton. Any state, any entity, any ideology that fails to recognize the worth, the dignity, the rights of humanity, that state is obsolete. It has one iron rule: logic is an enemy and truth is a menace. Yeah, I conditionally agree with that. Yeah, I think that's pretty good.
And it's not some alien parasite living in your body. I mean, you had sex. If you're in a straight relationship, what does that equal? Getting pregnant. Wow. I mean, we've been taught this since grade school. I mean,
yeah, which is where I think Misha's education stopped, right? Grade school. Yes, if you have unprotected sex, it can lead to pregnancy. Not every but it doesn't always, right? And this is where I always find it funny when somebody who's a little bit on the Christian side is like, oh, when it's just science, y'all, it's just medicine. If you hook up, you'll have a kid. No, you won't always do that, right? And the fact that it can be intermittent and for some people very difficult is the reason why primitive societies believed that when a woman became pregnant, it was God opening the womb, right? It wasn't about science, right? It was about the installation of a soul, and God opened the womb, or He closes the womb. So she miscarried. That was divine intervention on her body. Yeah, the idea that sex for a guy is about fun and about pleasure, right? And well, it should be about just having kids, right? But the consequences for it are for the man and the woman are having a baby. Okay, yeah. I mean, biologically, that's where reproduction leads, right? Right. But that's not all sex is for. Sex is also a social act. It's also about people bonding together. It's physically and emotionally and socially healthy for people to have sex, whether a child comes about or not. So the idea that no, I mean, because this is where I think this is kind of leading to, like, well, these are the consequences of having sex. Yeah, they might be they're not the consequences of every sexual event. That's not how sex works. Maybe Misha doesn't know that. I don't know. I don't want to get into like I don't know what are his. I hope she hasn't done any videos on that.
such negligence and irresponsibility on both sides, right? It's not just women. Men know what they're doing when they're having sex with women. There is a possibility that the woman is going to get pregnant. And then what a lot of men do is they pressure women into getting abortions, because some will say, oh, your career is going to be over, your life is going to be over. And we should talk about that also, right? It's not just the women that are pushing abortions. I think what it comes down to also is that a lot of
I think we should talk about that. Okay, are you going to talk about that, or did she just leave it there?
Women in today's society are also being told that the more people you have sex with, the more empowered you are somehow.
Okay, what in the fuck? It's fascinating to me. You could make a drinking game out of what she's saying, what women are being told. What are women being told, right? Where is this happening, right? I know that businesses want to sell you products. I know that the government wants you to pay your taxes and abide by the law, and I know that churches are telling people what to do. Churches are telling people that men are men and women are women, and when you have sex, you should only have kids. Like a lot of these messages that I'm hearing, right? Like I'm not hearing the messages as loudly as what she's saying. Like women are being told that they can't be women, and women are being told that they need to be more like men, and women are being told that they need to be ashamed of their bodies and ashamed of their femininity, which I think is she equates with ashamed of their, you know, female biological processes, which is different. So like how many like I really there's a lot going on here. I think she thinks she's put upon, right? Society is telling her these things. She's drawing that conclusion from the world around her because she's confused, right? I really don't think she's got a handle on a lot of these issues. She clearly does not have the abortion thing handled. And now, I mean, the fact that she got into this whole thing, well, I think a lot of men are encouraging these women to have abortions. There might be guys out there that would do that. I mean, and it depends on the dynamics of the relationship of whatever's happening between these people, right? But and I'm not going to say who I know or what I don't need to get into another anecdote, but the issue at hand here isn't about whether or not men and women are encouraging people to have abortions or not. That becomes one of these kind of weird social things, right? What I do know is here's something that I think Misha has not brought up yet, which I think has been conspicuously absent, right? Um, Actually, maybe she will bring it up. I'll hold this point off until she gets to it. Let's see.
And that is so ridiculous. Not only is that dangerous in terms of STDs, but the result of that is that you can get pregnant. And to be able to just murder a baby when that is inconvenient for you.
Not murder.
I mean, that's very immoral.
Not yet.
It's just like this lack of emotional connection that doesn't need to be part of the equation anymore. It's this empowering thing to be able to sleep with anyone at any time. Have you heard of abstinence?
No, we those of us in America have not been hearing about abstinence for the last 2 days. Like, okay, this is what happens when you're in your mid 20s and you don't, you know, like she was a toddler, I think, when George W. was hanging around, right? Like abstinence only education has been attempted, right? They've done that, right? And you know what happens when you actually try to employ that, right? As I understand that she's just like, hey, have you ever heard about maybe not having sex? Maybe that prevent some of your problems. Yes, if you take no risks, then you will not have to worry about the negative side effects of those actions, right? You also will not reap any benefits. You know, nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? In this particular sense, though, the abstinence thing, when it became the idea like, hey, let's let kids know that maybe they should just keep their legs closed. Don't be sexually active because it's going to lead to all these horribly terrifying things that Misha's talking about, right? Even though I think pregnancy, she would say, is beautiful, but pregnancy is also something you have to avoid unless you're in a relationship with just the right person and you're married and your sex is being endorsed by a god. Can you have sex even when you guys aren't planning on having kids? Is that casual sex? Is that evil? House of Comments? Anything? So this is all unworkable as far as I can tell. This is none of this really tracks with anything that I think is talking about here, because ultimately at the end of the day, one, no one gives a shit, right? The vast majority of people with lives to lead and things going on aren't going to give a shit about what other people are doing with their laps, right? Or with their mouths and those laps, right? And hands and laps and feet and laps. What you get the picture. Anyway, um, this idea that, okay, well, she's talking about a cultural issue, right? Mostly, and it seems to me that she is mostly positive about the Supreme Court's decision, right? And kind of criticizing liberals for being reacting to it. First of all, she claimed they were lying and getting it wrong, drawing the wrong conclusion and saying abortion was banned. Most liberals that I've read haven't been doing that. Secondly, the issue is, well, okay, but maybe this is actually a good thing. How, right? The issue that's been happening at this particular point, she's bringing in all this cultural baggage about what she thinks America as a culture is telling women what to do, right? And providing absolutely nothing to cite this, nothing, right? And most of the stuff that she's talking about, if women aren't happy, well, how long have we been living in a troubled economy of some sort? I mean, 2008 wasn't that long ago when we had a massive fucking housing crash and a recession from that. And even before then, we had huge upsets in the early aughts. In the last 22 years alone, there have been major financial upsets and huge cultural changes that have happened within this country. Not to mention the fact that we had, we're still getting through a global pandemic that apparently doesn't have any end in sight, and we could be looking at other viruses emerging down the road and climate problems. There's a reason that a lot of women are not happy, right? To say that women aren't happy because TV tells them that their period makes them less is a weird take.
Have you heard of contraceptives?
Yeah, we already talked about that. You've been demonizing one entire category of contraceptives for the bulk of this video. What the fuck is wrong with you? Why aren't you tracking your own conversation?
Have been around for a while, both those things. So,
Yeah, don't be condescending about it. You just went on a huge monologue about how potentially dangerous they are. They'll make you fat. She didn't mention the bone loss, but they'll make you fat. They'll make you crazy. They'll stop your period, which makes you ashamed of being a woman. What the fuck? Have you ever heard of them? Well, we just got a huge lecture from you about how we should probably avoid all of them, right? I mean, maybe Misha's only pro condom.
To sleep around, and of course they're going to want to do that because they know that abortions are so easily available to them, or were easily available to them, and there's no consequences because you can be as far along as 9 months pregnant and go into an abortion clinic and no questions asked.
You cannot do that. That has never been a thing.
Right? You can get an abortion.
You silly little idiot. At this point, now she's just fucking pissing me off. Look into that. This is the fallacy right here in a nutshell. A woman cannot, as an elective abortion in her third trimester, walk into a clinic and get that done. Right? Almost every state, right, had some kind of limits at the 20 weeks or 24 weeks. They're limited to the second. You cannot get that wasn't enough, right? It wasn't enough that it could happen in the second term. All of a sudden, these anti-abortion types had to tell people that, well, these women are just going in there, hatching the kid out, and the doctor's like putting a bullet in their face. Like, what the fuck kind of crazy story do you? Where did you hear that? Right? Like, did a Russian bot send you that on Facebook? Because that's not actually a thing that's occurring. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Women have had abortion procedures done in the third trimester to save their lives. That is not the same as a woman walking into a clinic and having an elective abortion in the third trimester. Anybody who wants to have an honest discussion about that needs to get that shit fucking straight. That does not fucking happen, right? If you were having an abortion in the third trimester in just about any state in the United States before the Dobbs decision, you were probably receiving an illegal procedure.
And you don't have to deal with the consequences of your actions. That's all for today's video, guys. I really hope you enjoyed. So please remember to hit subscribe and then.
Enjoyed is a weird word. No, I didn't enjoy it, but it did fire up some dopamine. Here's the other thing I wanted to say. Throughout the entire thing, this will be my final point on it, and then I will leave and I will stop ranting about this strange person. Until next time, until I see another video that she gets like completely wrong. Women are being told this. Women are being told that. Women are being shamed about this. Women are being done this. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, fine. All right, I get that. In another video, I don't know that she dropped it here. She mentioned something about, you know what? Is she comes out and says not only is she's cool with the idea that doctors should be able to perform abortion procedures to save a woman's life, but that she also believes in social spending to help women, especially single mothers, take care of their kids, right? To give them a lift up because this provides them, and that, they're going to be less anxious and less concerned about, their lives and the health and safety of their kid. Cool. What does our society tell women who are on welfare? What do Christian conservatives in this country specifically tell women? Because I know Misha is super upset about what women are being told all the time. What does it tell women who accept benefits from the government to raise their kids? In conservative circles, it often demonizes them, right? Conservatives generally fucking hate a social safety net. They absolutely despise it. If they go real traditional, they think that the only thing the government should be is a military that prevents Russia and England from invading, right? That's all you pay for. No benefits, no, you bootstrap it, bitches, do it yourselves, right? So if okay, cool, I agree with that. If the state is going to take a position where it says, you know what, as the state, we can enforce this decision. You as a woman do not have the ability to elect to terminate a pregnancy. You will carry it to term. I think if the state has that requirement on a person, the state should pony up resources to help that come about, to facilitate that. I believe the same thing with almost any procedure that a state does. If a state says that doctors need to be licensed, I believe that the credentialing for that, the materials for that should be provided by the state, right? Now, whether or not they extract a fee or something like that, that's one thing. But in a lot of states, what they'll do is they'll tell somebody, hey, in the state of Arizona, state of Michigan, state of New York, whatever, you need to get a license to be a dentist or something like that. And then when the dentist is like, okay, cool, how do I go about and do that? How do I do that? Depending on the state that you're in, the state could have privatized the whole thing. I don't believe in that. Oh, you need to go here to buy the text, the books to learn about it. You need to go pay this company to take the test, and then you need to go and pay this private company to send the test over to us so that we can evaluate it. Once we get all that stuff that you've paid for from these private companies, we pull it together and we're in agreement that their stuff is cool. We put it together and then we give you your license. Bullshit. If the state requires it, the state should provide you the avenue to go about getting it. So if the state requires you to have a kid, they need to pony up the money to make sure that those women have the support to have those kids, right? But the problem is, just because the government does that does not mean you're going to reverse an enormous amount of cultural stigma in a huge chunk of the population that thinks that when people accept a benefit from the government, they're accepting shackles. They're being enslaved, right? Women are being told this in the conservative movement. I know. I used to be in the conservative movement, and I used to tell women this. I used to firmly believe this. If you accept those benefits, you accept the shackles, right? That's going back to the old school traditional stuff. Government bad, government benefits bad, right? But now we've got somebody here who's a cultural conservative and might be diddling around with the idea, oh, okay, well, that's perfectly fine. They can do that. But what are women being told, Misha? What are women being told? Women are being told that they're layabouts, that they're grifters, that they're thieves, that they're moochers. They're, how did the Nazis call them? Eaters. They just take from society and they raise their kids and they raise them up and okay. So what are they going to be told culturally? Are you going to swing that stick and change the cultural perception that most conservatives in her circles think when they hear about especially if it's a single mom, a person of color on government benefits, right? One of the motivations, and I'll wrap it up here. One of the motivations that always gets left out about this, one is that women don't understand the cost of a kid. I think that that's insulting to its core. The single thing is that these women don't value life. No, they understand the value of life. They understand its cost. That's why they're terrified of having a kid at this point, right? It's going to cost not, and I'm not just talking about a financial decision. The cost, physically, emotionally, socially, whatever. It's a cost, massive cost that the woman has to bear, right? The guy can show up and be like, "Hey, I'll help. I'll write a check for this test. I'll do this." Yeah, no. 80% of that work, 90% of that work is going to be her with that kid. 90 to 99%, depending on when he decides to like check out. And I don't just mean like check out and leave her. I'm not saying that's inevitable, but like he loses his stamina and just, I just want to watch the football game. She's dealing with a screaming kid that's got a fever or something like that. And he just, he's had enough. He can't be bothered. Right. Those are the costs. That's just a tiny little illustration, but those are part of the costs that are associated with it that she has to weigh. Then on top of it, this notion that, oh, well, we can just give them government benefits, but the culture doesn't respect them for that. Some of these women may be getting an abortion because they don't want to eat people's shit. I don't want to be a single mom. I know that if I have this kid, I'm going to be a single mom, strapped for cash, grinding, struggling, sleepless, depressed, enraged, scared, poor, and then on government benefits. So on top of all of that work, all of that stress, all of that desperation, I have an entire, a huge percentage of the population that's looking down on me because I have had a kid. You watch. That's not going to go away. Now that all these states where these women have to carry a child to term, will those people in those anti-abortion groups respect those pregnant mothers, those especially the single mothers, more? No, they won't. In fact, I'm going to go so far as to say they'll probably respect them even less. They're going to treat people even worse, which is what's coming next. So keep watching for those Supreme Court decisions. So sorry, folks, that this one was a little bit ranty and a little bit rambly, but yeah, I think most of this stuff surrounding the abortion debate has been childish and stupid for 40 years. I think it's gotten worse. I think the Christian anti-choice movement has made it an absolutely stupid thing to talk about because they can't keep their facts straight. They can't keep their narrative straight. I expect that from people who believe in a God based on a narrative that doesn't keep itself straight. So, yeah, all right, we'll wrap it up there. So, thank you all for your comments. Thank you for your likes, if any. Like, subscribe, do all that kind of stuff, or hate and flag, whatever. Other than that, yeah, I think that's going to be it for now. Probably we'll be coming back. Next video is probably going to be about Darth Dawkins talking to a physicist on Clubhouse. That should be fun. Other than that, I hope everybody has a great, if you're in the United States, I hope you have a great holiday weekend. 4th of July is coming up. So stay safe, eat a lot of food if you can. If you're working, take it easy, stay safe, be careful, and I will catch you all later. And yeah, that should do it.